So, today, for the second part of the podcast, I'm going to address a common argument against socialism in American society. I mean, if you're going to make a podcast that is advocating for a socialist revolution in the United States of America, you are going to have to address a lot of misinformation in order to win over a lot of people. The unfortunate truth is that the average citizen of this country does not have the first clue about what socialism is or the key concepts of what Karl Marx talked about, which is a dramatic failure of our educational institutions due to the reality that Karl Marx is one of, if not the most, influential philosopher of all time. So in the previous podcast, I spent the second half of the episode defining socialism and communism, so that's not what I'm going to do in this one. Instead, I'm going to directly address the idea that socialism goes against human nature. You know, the argument that socialism and communism look great on paper, but they are simply non-compatible with humans on a biological level. In this argument is either the spoken or non-spoken implication that capital and the profit incentive is the best incentive structure possible for humans, and that this is an inevitable result of human nature. I find it particularly important to address this talking point because it's such a bold claim. I mean, if a system literally does not function with human nature, then it is a system that is forever doomed to fail. So if you buy into this argument, why would you ever bother looking into the nuanced arguments in favor of these ideologies? Now, I find this argument very problematic and even disturbing, and I'm going to explain why. Now, yes, I agree that capitalism is human nature and reflects human nature in a lot of ways. But I would also say that socialism and communism does this as well, and it is the evolution of our nature as a society. Socialism is the realization that the capitalist system of perverse incentives is wrong and nonsensical due to the fact that it is riddled with flaws and contradictions, and that we can do a lot better by working together rather than against each other. To say that the idea of people adapting their system of commerce in a way that restructures the incentives of production and distribution in a way that is dramatically more efficient at eliminating poverty, the idea that this goes against human nature, I think, is pretty much nihilistic and short-sighted. And the only evidence that's ever made on this argument is made from straw-manning socialist and communist ideology. Another important point is that there have been cultures in human history that have had key elements of communism in them, which is evidence that socialism and communism is completely natural to mankind. Just look at different Native American populations where private ownership was not really a thing, and they shared resources and land based on needs. Do people argue that these cultures were unnatural due to these beliefs? Of course they don't, because that's stupid. To say that capitalism is human nature and socialism goes against human nature, end of story, makes no sense. Nature is always evolving. It is not a stagnant force. And I have not seen one shred of evidence, again, that a socialist economic system goes against human nature. Now, the reason I find this argument disturbing in particular is because every time someone or a group of people have a gross amount of power in a society, they use nature to justify it. And they do this because nature never changes. Blaming the grotesque results of capitalism on human nature makes them feel secure and safe within their social class. And it also makes them feel like they rightfully belong there. The pharaohs did this. Countless emperors from all over the world have done this exact thing. Slave owners made this argument. They would do horrible things to try to convince the slave population that they were naturally inferior and would not be able to survive without their abusive masters. I mean, the very concept of royalty is exactly that. The belief that their very bloodline is the justification for their power. And it's not a coincidence that you can never change someone's blood. Now, I know that some people listening to this might even be like, well, I agree with that argument, and I'm not of the owning class. I'm not of the upper class even. So that's not why I believe this, but I'm saying the arguments originated from the upper class. It's been like this forever. There's always been these arguments floating around in any really inequitable economic system. This is history. Attributing your power to nature is the oldest trick in the book, and every time is bullshit. Where this argument really comes from is the powerful owning class doing mind gymnastics in order to justify their class position. Many wealthy Americans believe that homeless people are largely deadbeats and need to get a job. They don't care to know the fact that 40% of homeless people in the United States are indeed employed. And that only includes taxed jobs. Just think about how many more homeless people are under the table employed. And their response to this would be something like, well, they need to get a better job. And that's when you realize that goalposts will always be moving in order to justify an immoral system if you are massively benefiting from that system at the expense of others. So that's me debunking that argument. If you guys disagree, or if you have any counterpoints to make to me debunking that, or anything from this episode, the current events, my take on them, whatever you want, just send me an email. Thanks for listening, and I will see y'all next week, either Sunday or Monday. Stay safe, and have a good one.